हुई है। 80s और 90s के दौरान जो चाइनीज डायस्पोरा का रोल था अपने यहाँ अपने होम कंट्री में, न सिर्फ आइडियाज और टेक्नोलॉजीज को मुतारिफ कराने में, बल्कि एक्चुअली आके फिर वहां पे सर्व करने में भी वो एक बाकायदा ऐसी चीज है जिसके उसके ऊपर ज्यादा गौर नहीं किया जाता, जिक्र नहीं होता। तो उसी की रोशनी में ये हम डिबेट करते रहे और फिर हमने इसको सोचा कि क्यों ना हम एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म बनाएं जो कि पॉलिसी का कुछ काम भी करे, एडवोकेसी भी करे, वहां भी यहाँ भी। और यही इसका बुनियादी, आप ये देख सकते हैं स्क्रीन के ऊपर इसके जो ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं हमारे, और उसमें बेसिकली यही हम चाहते हैं कि किसी तरह से बायलैटरल जो रिलेशनशिप भी है पाकिस्तानी माहिरीन का और अमेरिका में जो माहिरीन, और बहुत सारे पाकिस्तानी वहाँ पे आपको हर यूनिवर्सिटी में, थिंक टैंक्स में और बड़े बड़े इदारों में आपको मिलेंगे, और वो जो कि बड़ा जबरदस्त काम करें, कटिंग एज काम करें जैसे कहा जाता है। तो हमने कहा कैसे उसको लेवरेज किया जाए, स्ट्रीमलाइन किया जाए, कनेक्ट किया जाए पाकिस्तान में होने वाली पॉलिसी कॉन्वर्सेशंस के साथ। और यही हमारी एक छोटी सी काविश है, इसका आगाज है, और इंशाल्लाह आगे बढ़कर ये हमारे कुछ एरियाज हैं जहां पर आप देख सकते हैं कि हमने जहां पे तवज्जो देनी है। उसमें जाहिर बात है मईशत है, तरक्की, इंसानी तरक्की के जो बहुत बड़े बड़े इश्यूज हैं, क्लाइमेट और एनर्जी जो कि इस वक्त सबसे बड़ा मसला है पाकिस्तान का, जनूबी एशिया का, बल्कि दुनिया का। इस वक्त हम एक आलमी तौर पे एक गैर मामूली हीट वेव से गुजर रहे हैं, और ना सिर्फ यहाँ लातीनी अमेरिका, अफ्रीका, एशिया, खुद मगरबी यूरोप और अमेरिका में इस वक्त उसके ऊपर बहुत ज्यादा बात हो रही है कि टेम्परेचर जो है वो क्रॉस कर गए हैं 1.5 डिग्री से। तो थोड़ा सा ये हट जाइएगा ताकि ये स्लाइड्स तो, और फिर जाहिर बात है उसमें गवर्नमेंट का भी काम है, टेक्नोलॉजी का भी काम है। तो ये सारे इन इश्यूज और इन एरियाज में हम कोशिश करेंगे तहकीक। हमारी ये इब्तदाई जो एक टीम नॉलेज ने तारुफ करवाई दिया है, हारून खाजा साहब का भी तारुफ आपसे और हो जाएगा, वो कुछ अपना बताएंगे भी तफसील में। एंटरप्रेन्योर भी हैं, बिजनेसमैन भी हैं, हुकूमत में भी काम कर चुके हैं, सूबाई और फेडरल गवर्नमेंट दोनों में। और ये कि जो उनका ये इसके ऊपर बहुत फोकस रहा है कि किस तरह से वो ऐसी पॉलिसी सॉल्यूशंस और ऐसे पॉलिसी रिसर्च सामने लाएं और उसको यहाँ पर मुतारिफ करवाएं जिसकी कि अशद जरूरत है इस वक्त पाकिस्तान में। आगे चलिए। बाकी ये हमारी वेबसाइट भी अब ये बन रही है, इसके ऊपर आप प्लीज इसको भी चेक कीजिएगा। काराकोरम इनिशिएटिव को गूगल करेंगे तो आपको मिल जाएगी। वैसे हम आपको इसका लिंक भी भेज देंगे। कुछ रिपोर्ट्स भी आ गई हैं। साथ ही में हम अपना ये भी कोशिश करें कि वीडियो के जरिए भी जो काम हम करें मुख्तलिफ मसाइल के ऊपर, जैसे कि साफ पानी, पीने का पानी या दीगर ये पॉपुलेशन के ऊपर भी हमारी ये काविश होगी। हमने सबसे पहले इसको सिलेक्ट भी किया पॉपुलेशन क्राइसिस जो है, क्योंकि ये क्राइसिस इसे कहा जाएगा। ये अब ऑब्सोलीट टर्म्स हो गए, पॉपुलेशन रेट, पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ, पॉपुलेशन कंट्रोल, क्योंकि हकीकत में ये एक टाइम बॉम्ब है और जो टिक भी कर रहा है, जिसकी कोई इस वक्त सही तवज्जो नहीं दी जा रही किसी भी खाते के ऊपर, जो कि मिलनी चाहिए हर लेवल ऑफ गवर्नमेंट पे, सिविल सोसाइटी से, मीडिया से खुसूसन, और वो नहीं हो रही। और यही वजह है कि हम कोशिश करेंगे किस तरह से इसके ऊपर बातचीत को आगे बढ़ाया जाए। और बहुत सी और हमारी पॉडकास्ट और दीगर टूल्स के जरिए काराकोरम इनिशिएटिव जो है वो, अक्सर आपने देखा होगा कि बहुत से पॉलिसी पेपर्स जरा सकीम होते हैं, टेक्निकल होते हैं, उनको समझने में, लोगों को तक नॉलेज पहुंचाने में एक जरूरत होती है कि कैसे हम उसको आगे पॉपुलराइज करें। तो एक ये भी हमारी बहुत जैसे कहना चाहिए काविश होगी आने वाले महीनों सालों में कि किस तरह से ये ब्रिज हम करें कि जो नॉलेज पॉलिसी रिलेटेड रिसर्च प्रोड्यूस हो रही है पाकिस्तान में, जो हम कर रहे हैं, जो और लोग कर रहे हैं, उसको किस तरह आम फहम अंदाज में लोगों तक पहुंचाएं, मुतारिफ करवाएं, ताकि उससे जो जब तक कोई एक इन्फॉर्म्ड पब्लिक ओपिनियन किसी भी माशरे में नहीं बनता तो तब्दीली जो है वो मुमकिन नहीं होती। और वो उसी वक्त होती है कि जब आप ये कोशिश करें कि लोगों को ना सिर्फ शऊर मिले, उनको हक़ाइक़ मिले, उनको सही सिमत में गुफ्तगू का अंदाज हो। तो ये हमारी बुनियादी चीज है। हमने इस हमारे यहाँ पे तो अभी हम इसको डेवलप कर रहे हैं। यहाँ पर ये हमारा पहला इवेंट है वॉशिंगटन डीसी में। हमने इससे पहले कुछ महीने पहले एक वहाँ पे इवेंट भी किया था। वहाँ पे हमारे साथ दे रहे हैं आप सब ने उनका नाम सुना होगा, डॉक्टर अकबर एस अहमद, साबिक सफीर भी रहे हैं पाकिस्तान के, हिस्टोरियन भी हैं, एकेडमिक भी हैं, शुजा नवाज साहब हैं जो कि काफी किताबों के मुसन्निफ भी हैं, IMF के साथ काम करते रहे हैं और आप सब उनकी चीजें पढ़ते भी होंगे, देखते भी होंगे, तो उनका भी जो है हमारे साथ संगत है। कामरान बुखारी वाबस्ता है, वहाँ पे न्यूज लाइन्स नाम में एक थिंक टैंक है वॉशिंगटन डीसी में, वो भी हमारे साथ हैं वाबस्ता, और भी बहुत लोग IT के सेक्टर में, एजुकेशन में, हेल्थ में, क्लाइमेट एक्शन में, एनर्जी रिसोर्सेज में। मैं नाम लूंगा तो बड़ी लंबी बात हो जाएगी, मैं नहीं चाहता कि मैं ही बोलता रहूं, क्योंकि अभी आपको हमने ये भी बताना है कि आज ये पॉपुलेशन का जो मेन टॉपिक है उसमें हमने क्या तहकीक किया, क्योंकि हमने कोशिश ये की है कि बजाय इसके कि हम बहुत ज्यादा उसके वो बैकग्राउंड में जाएं या मसाइल में जाएं कि आगे कैसे बढ़ना है और आगे क्या जो है इकदाम उठाए जा सकते हैं जिससे कि पाकिस्तान में जो आबादी का बढ़ती हुई आबादी का एक क्राइसिस है उसको कैसे टैकल किया जाए मुख्तलिफ तरीकों से। तो मैं ज्यादा वक्त और नहीं लूंगा, आप सबकी आमद का एक बार शुक्रिया। हमारी ये पहली एक छोटा सा ये स्टेप है और इंशाल्लाह ये आगे बढ़ेगा, तो आप देखेंगे कि और भी हम मामलात में काम बढ़ाएंगे और आपके सामने मजीद पेश करेंगे। हम ये भी चाहेंगे कि ना सिर्फ आप हमारी एक बातें सुने या हमारे लिखे हुए मकाले, पेपर्स या उनको पढ़ें, बल्कि आप उसमें शिरकत भी करें, उसका हिस्सा बने, अपने कमेंट्स भी दें और हमें आइडियाज भी दें कि किन खतूत के ऊपर और किन टॉपिक्स के ऊपर हमें मजीद काम करना चाहिए और कैसे इसको बेहतर करना चाहिए और इसका असर कैसे हो। क्योंकि यूं तो ये बहुत सारे आपको पता है पाकिस्तान में बड़े इदारे और थिंक टैंक्स हुकूमती गैर सरकारी प्राइवेट सेक्टर में बहुत मौजूद है, लेकिन जो बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम और क्राइसिस है वो उनका इम्पैक्ट नहीं होता, और उस इम्पैक्ट को क्रिएट करने के लिए ही हम चाहेंगे कि आपसे मजीद आपकी आरा भी ले जाए, Q&A भी करेंगे, उसमें भी आपसे इसके ऊपर बातचीत करेंगे। तो बगैर वक्त किए हम आगे बढ़ते हैं प्रोग्राम में। और इस
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया रजा साहब for the detailed and elaborate analysis of what Karakoram Initiative is and what we hope to achieve through that. और इससे पहले कि मैं हारून साहब को दावत दूं, I would like to welcome DG Population, Ms. Saman Rai, who have just joined us. Thank you for taking the time out and being here. और हारून साहब, please welcome to the stage and share your.
जी मेरा
Thank you for your participation, everyone. मेरी पाकिस्तान की governance और सियासत and the way Pakistan is being running for the past 75 plus years. Your journey, it started about 27 years ago in 1996 when I joined one of the large political parties of Pakistan. Since then, fast forward, I served as the advisor to the Prime Minister from 97 to 99, advisor to the Chief Minister of Punjab from 2008 to 2012. I've formed several organizations, various initiatives, headed task forces, committees, and all that. लेकिन इस सारे सफर में मेरी कोशिश ये थी कि रिसर्च जो है वो किसी तरह से की जाए पाकिस्तान के बारे में कि व्हाट इज द प्रॉब्लम, व्हाई इज इट कि पाकिस्तानी जो हैं वो पाकिस्तान से बाहर जाते हैं, they just excel anywhere in the world you go, you see Pakistanis excelling. So Pakistan mein wapas aake kya problem hai? So I started gathering, I started meeting people, gathering the best of the best intellectuals of Pakistan. Different platforms बनाए उनको इकट्ठा किया and started researching. This is my 27th year of research. 2010 में we were finally, myself and 35 other people, we were finally able to put together Pakistan's first homegrown, comprehensive, vertically and horizontally integrated plan called the Pakistan Plan. So, it's not gonna. So just to give an idea, this is Pakistan Plan. It's a summary, obviously. And there was a time in Pakistan 10, 15 years ago, there were 88 ministers, 88 ministers थे federal government of Pakistan के. आजकल कोई 30-40 के करीब हैं. And you know, आप लोग different meetings, boards, committees, आपने attend की होंगी. The rule of thumb is कि अगर कोई board meeting जिसके अंदर double digit के अंदर board members हो तो उसका कोई you know sensible result निकलना मुश्किल होता है. So you can imagine जहाँ पे 88 लोग बैठे हैं वहाँ पे उस मुल्क की क्या decision making होनी है और जहाँ पे 40 ministers बैठे हैं वो क्या decision making होगी. So we researched, हमारी empirical evidence based research ये Pakistan plan है. We came to the conclusion कि पाकिस्तान चलाने के लिए आपको 16 ministries चाहिए, only 16 ministries. By the way, ये plan जो है पाकिस्तान के तमाम जो बड़े leaders हैं, without naming them, उनको मैं present कर चुका हूँ. और वो 16 ministers भी आप सोचें कि जब cabinet meeting होगी तो 8 यहाँ बैठे होंगे, 8 यहाँ बैठे होंगे, दरमियान में prime minister होगा तो वो भी एक जलसा है. So we then came up with this formula of clusters, जो कि आप ऊपर इसके colors देख रहे हैं, white, blue, red, green, and yellow. We formed 5 clusters which are headed by 5 senior ministers who are going to deal with the prime minister on a daily basis. And हर 2 हफ्ते के बाद cabinet meeting होगी जिसमें ये 16 ministers बैठेंगे. ये वो 16 ministers हैं. आपको कोई और ministry नहीं चाहिए पाकिस्तान के अंदर. और बड़ी efficiently इसको चलाया जा सकता है. While doing this research, हमने realize किया कि पाकिस्तान को ठीक करने के लिए तकरीबन 100 से थोड़े से ज़्यादा चीजें करने की जरूरत है. लेकिन अगर हम 14 items अगर उनको focus करें और उनको एक certain order से implement करें तो Pakistan can actually get back onto the right track and a track of growth और वो बाकी 100 चीजें खुद को खुद ठीक हो जाएंगी. ये हैं वो 14 items. And as you can see, ground zero in these 14 is number 6, which is education and skills. That's where we need to go. But the problem is you can't get there until and unless you tackle the first 5. अब इसमें आज हम इसलिए यहाँ पे हैं क्योंकि number 2 population control है. If I had my way, I would have put it at number 1, but I can't because number 1 are the people who are going to implement number 2. So we have to first fix number 1. So where do you start in fixing Pakistan? You start with meaningful civil service reforms, not one of those 35 committees and reports जो कि बन चुकी हैं 75 years के अंदर. This was basically, you know, they're theoretical. So we came up with a solution, and you know, inshallah, kabhi future initiatives mein aapse share karenge. But today we're going to talk about population control. Please have a look at this and note that ye jo top 5 hai isme koi paise bhi nahi lagte hain. Civil service reform meaningful karne ke liye koi paison ki zarurat nahi hai. Population control, as Norez will tell you after I finish, iske andar bhi koi paise nahi chahiye. Justice at doorstep. The system needs to be, you know, revamped. No no funds needed. We draw Pakistan budget. We're consistently continuing to run after a document called Pakistan budget, जो कि हमें एक circular kind of a run के अंदर उसने involve किया हुआ है. हम हर साल एक document लिखते हैं जो कि pretty much पिछले साल की तरह का होता है और उसके पीछे भागना शुरू करते हैं. और result ये है कि if you keep doing the same thing, you'll keep getting the same results, as Einstein said. So we need to have a new budget for Pakistan, which we've written and we'll share with you at some point. And finally, you can't really have anything meaningful going on in any country without a local government. So ये पांच चीजें होंगी जनाब, तो फिर कुछ होगा पाकिस्तान के अंदर. So enough of these 14 points. Let me just come back to today's topic. तो अभी situation ये है कि so just to let you know, in 1998 मैं SMETA का solution Prime Minister को present किया था तब, and as I was coming out of the presentation, the Prime Minister pulled me on the side and he said कि भाई you need to do something about the population. उस वक्त जो Prime Minister का national agenda था जिसको मैं head कर रहा था, उसमें population was not part of it. So I was like, there's so much more to do. ये क्या population मुझे इन्होंने दे दी है. Little did I know after 1 year of research that population needs to be fixed before anything else. At that time, we were 130 million people. This is 1998. That's when I came up with the solution. Today, 2024, we're 250 million, but trust me, the solution is exactly the same. So, काश ये हो जाता उस वक्त. About 500,000 schools we have. 5 lakh schools, जिसमें से सिर्फ 24,000 high schools हैं. About 3,500 colleges, inter or degree colleges, 3,200 technical training institutes, about 200 universities. 13,000 के करीब बच्चे डेली पैदा हो रहे हैं. ये रिप्लेसमेंट नहीं है, ये एडिशन है. As we talk today, when we wake up in the morning tomorrow, there's going to be 13,000 more citizens of this country. Assuming कि एक स्कूल में 1,000 बच्चा होता है, जो कि नहीं होता, इससे बहुत कम होते हैं. Assuming आपको हर रोज 13 हाई स्कूल बनाने हैं, 13. Assuming एक हॉस्पिटल में 1,000 बेड्स होते हैं, जो कि नहीं होते, आपको हर रोज 13 हॉस्पिटल बनाने हैं. इसी तरह से कितने पुलिस स्टेशन आप बना लेंगे अपने आप को सिक्योर करने के लिए, कितना इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बना लेंगे. We cannot feed these people despite having a very fertile land and seasons. We can't give them sanitation. We can't give them clean drinking water. We are a severely water scarce country. We're not giving them any education. We're not imparting any skills on them. 44% of school-going children, they're out of school. That's about 23 million children. About 60% of our population is under 25. 25 to 60 years is about 35%. Only about 6% is over 60, and they're running the country. Complete disconnect. My dear friend, Dr. Nadeem Ulhaq, I was sitting with him a couple of days ago, and he told me that 3 million people are joining the job market every year. 30 lakh log har saal hamare job market mein aate hain. और इसको absorb करने के लिए Pakistan needs at least 8% growth. We're just crossing 2% as per government. मुझे डॉक्टर साहब ने बताया कि he can hire a PhD today never mind the quality. He said that he can hire a PhD for lesser amount than he hires a driver. That's where we are today. So, as I said, this is where we start. And population needs to be fixed. I will not waste more of your time. Norez is going to talk about it in detail, लेकिन मैं कुछ acknowledgements देना चाहूँगा. बाबर हुसैन साहब जिन्होंने 1998 में मेरे साथ मिलकर रिसर्च की और फर्स्ट पेपर लिखा, उसके बाद वो he's in Islamabad. डॉक्टर नईमुद्दीन मियां जिन्होंने फिर इसको अपडेट किया 2015 के अंदर. And of course, thank you Norez. Norez has now updated it again in 2024. Also, I'd like to thank Raza Rumi. Raza and I have shaken hands to form this initiative, which is based in Washington, D.C., but it talks about Karakoram, which leads all the way from Pakistan to China. The world today is in between these two poles, United States and China. That's why Karakoram, and that's why it's based in D.C. And that's why Pakistan is so important, because that's where the US and China story started, from Pakistan. I would also like to thank people who've been with me for all these years. Sayyid Nabil Hashmi, Jawad Aslam Saab, Ibrahim Qureshi Saab, यहाँ पे बैठे हैं. मैं जावेद इकबाल अवान साहब यहाँ तशरीफ रखते हैं. उनका बहुत शुक्रगुजार हूँ. कंसिस्टेंटली मेरे साथ ब्रेनस्टॉर्म करते हैं इन सारे सॉल्यूशंस के ऊपर, मुझे एडवाइस करते हैं. I'd also like to thank His Excellency Zafar Mahmood Saab. He's one of the top experts on China that we have in Pakistan. We're lucky to have him in Pakistan, and I'm lucky to have known him. Dr. Shujaat Saab तशरीफ रखते हैं. Again, Dr. Saab consistently हमारे साथ brainstorm करते हैं and guides us. Tariq Najmi Saab, बहुत शुक्रिया, तशरीफ रखते हैं यहाँ पे. Faisal Bari, one of the top economists of Pakistan. Thank you, Bari Saab. Again, you know, I continue to tap into his wisdom. So, और बाकी आप सब माज महमूद यहाँ पे बैठे हैं, All Pakistan Business Forum के president. Ibrahim Qureshi is the chairman. General Ashraf Salim Saab यहाँ बैठे हैं, former ambassador to Nigeria. Amjad Bhatti Saab बैठे हैं. All of you, thank you very much. Arfa Malik Saab, one of the top bankers of Pakistan, and the Governor of Punjab, thank you, आप तशरीफ लाए हैं, Saman, and the Secretary of Higher Education, Special Education, thank you for your time as well. जी, Madam Saima. So आप लोगों का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. So इसके साथ ही मैं नॉरेज को कहता हूँ कि please let us know what should we do in population. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harun Saab. You've actually जो मेरा जो initial portion था इस paper present करने का हमारी findings अब आपने काफी अच्छी तरीके से कर दिए. So I will run through this and not take a lot of the time for people who've been here. But अब तक मेरी ये ख्वाहिश नहीं थी कि मैं alarm bells ring करूं, but I think we are at a stage where we really need to ring the alarm bells in terms of where this problem is and where the issue stands. And if you would ask me my personal take on it, and I am sure that a lot of economists and people who are in the policy sphere would agree that population is a ticking time bomb, which once used to be an asset for the country, has now manifested into a very complex problem, and it is very hard to kind of find and maneuver a way around this. We are currently at over 240 million, growing at an annual rate of 1.98% every year. And when I say 1.98%, it's one of the highest in the world. And if you compare it to other countries, even if we compare it regionally to China and India, their growth rates are 0.1% and 0.8% respectively. That's just about it. At this rate, we would be 400 million by 2050. And we would double in the next 38 years. So basically, we are in resource-constrained, economically vulnerable country. And we are adding more and more people whose needs we want to satisfy in a dignified manner. And we are already failing, and we're failing miserably at that. Now, population is one thing, and on the other hand, parallel to it is the level of human development. As evident from a lot of indicators on health, employment, education, gender, it's very obvious that we're failing, and we really cannot realize the demographic dividend. अब जो demographic dividend इसको कहते हैं, वो एक मुल्क का ability होती है, which enables the country or the government to really harness the potential and the promise of its population. And we have, जिस तरह अभी हारून साहब ने mention किया, we have 44% of our population of school-going age are not going to schools. That amounts to 22.8 million people. 36 or 37% of our population faces food insecurity. And the same number of people, about 37%, kids, they are stunted and they're malnutrition. 39, close to 40% is either close to or below the poverty line. If you look at the health infrastructure, we have only 6 beds for 10,000 people. We have 1 doctor for every 1,300 people. So with these figures, it's just impossible that Pakistan can really realize the opportunity and the potential that its population may or may have had offered a couple of years ago. And now, a lot of economists would argue, and there are people who believe, who have a different school of thought, who argue that population should not be the decisive factor when you're talking about economic growth, stability, or sustainability. But let's assume that we put population aside and we look at the realistic figure. We are not talking about theory over here. Realistically, हर साल जो है, we continue to accrue more debt, both public, private, external. इस वक्त जो हमारा debt है, वो $234 billion का है. और we don't need to look at historical figures. अभी जो 2024 के अंदर अभी कुछ हफ्ते पहले जो budget पास हुआ है, उसके अंदर से 50% of the allocated funds will go towards debt restructuring, will go towards interest repayments. तो आपने 50% तो सारा का सारा जो आपने जमा करना है, वो होता है नहीं होता, वो बात की बात है. वो आपने वैसे ही अपने जो कर्जे लिए हैं उनको उतारने की मद में लगा देना है. तो पिजा इस सूरत हाल में you barely have anything left to invest in human capital or even to invest in issues that we are facing every day, every other summer. Climate resilience हो गया, mitigation हो गया, adaptation हो गया. So in realization and acknowledging the fact that we are not a very well developed country, we are continuously facing economic issues. We cannot feed the amount of mouths that we need to feed because it's just beyond our capabilities. So there really exists a case for population control for a country, low-income country, which is in its developing stages like Pakistan. We're not doing a cross-country examination, but economic models and a lot of research has found that low dependency issues, if you're able to decrease the fertility rates, creates greater opportunity for productivity, savings, and investments in future growth. At the household level, it's directly linked to your levels of poverty. It has reduced poverty. And if you look at the well-being of a kid or a child, it's associated with better health, better schooling, and better and greater ability to be part of the labor force when they grow up and they mature. South Korea was at a similar stage, but like quite a lot of years ago. And they effectively took measures to reduce their population. And now if you look at these figures that we read, and there's a lot of detail in the paper if you read it, their income GDP per capita grew from around $1,800 in 1981 to about $35,000 in 2021. And if you look at Pakistan, we've only grown from 300 odd to 1,500. So we are actually behind South Korea, what they were in even the 1980s. And this is not factoring the purchasing power parity. Now, if you would question a lot of people, they would assume, और जो यहाँ पे अमूमी तौर पे जो समझा जाता है कि our social, cultural, and religious norms are such that they act as an impediment, as a barrier for population reduction. But if you zoom out, and we did our research and we found कि पाकिस्तान की जो ख़वातीन का जो fertility rate है, that is 3.47 per women, one of the highest in the world. And you can look at other countries on the chart over there. But the interesting thing is that 52% of married women who do not want to bear a child, they do not have access to contraceptive techniques. They don't have access to healthcare. So it's not actually much of an issue of religious, social, or cultural norms. But we have 3.8 million unintended pregnancies that neither of the parent planned for. We have only 25% of women have access to modern contraception, which is among the lowest even in Muslim countries. So it begs the question that is it only about social and cultural norms that we've been telling ourselves, या सिर्फ ये इसका मस्बी फिनोमेना है, इस वजह से हमसे पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ नहीं हो रहा, या इसके अंदर एक्चुअली फेलियर है गवर्नमेंट का एट वेरियस लेवल्स. Pakistan, interestingly, ironically, was one of the first countries in 1960s जिन्होंने family population planning program बनाया. उन्होंने अपने targets set किए, but year on year we saw that they were unable to meet those targets. 2002 में गालिबन पाकिस्तान ने अपनी पॉपुलेशन पॉलिसी बनाई जिसके मुताबिक उनका जो टारगेट था 2002 में कि they would reach replacement fertility by 2020. So basically you would minimize the rate of growth जिस तरह चाइना ने किया 0.1%. 2012 के अंदर उन्होंने एक और पॉलिसी बनाई जिसका टारगेट ये था कि they would increase the rate of access to contraception for women from 25% to 50%. वो भी अभी वो 30% के भी आगे पीछे नहीं है. मतलब they've been failing to meet those targets. और उसकी वजह क्या है? एक वजह तो बड़ी वाज़ेह है. अमूमन हम सुनते हैं जी पाकिस्तान में बड़े बड़े इश्यूज के ऊपर आवाजें उठाई जाती हैं, पॉलिटिकल लेवल के ऊपर, करप्शन के ऊपर इतना ज्यादा हंगामा मचता है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के ऊपर बनता है, बट फॉर पॉपुलेशन यू वुड barely be endorsed and be raised as an issue by leading political factions, by political parties, and even political leaders. You would never hear them call out, shout out about it, lay the spotlight that it badly needs, because it does not get you the kind of rhetoric that other issues. Then we see that there's gaps in service delivery. आपकी जो population से वाबस्ता जितनी भी agencies बनी हुई हैं, they have not been able to develop the arteries और जो veins कहते हैं जो कि reach कर सकें और expand कर सकें अपने access to information को भी और access to contraception को भी through various demographic and various regions. वो rural हो गया, urban हो गया, वो वहाँ तक पहुँच ही नहीं पाते. 18th amendment से पहले ये इसका mandate federal के नीचे आता था, फिर 18th amendment हुई 2010 के आगे पीछे, उसके बाद इसको बना डिवॉल्व कर दिया गया प्रोविंसेस के अंदर. लेकिन प्रोविंसेस के अंदर भी जब डिवॉल्व कर दिया गया उसकी वजह से एक तो कोई होमोजेनस पॉलिसी बन ही नहीं सकी जो कि सारे प्रोविंसेस को एक पेज पे ला सके. दूसरी वजह से बहुत एक जो इंटर प्रोविंशियल कोऑर्डिनेशन होती है उसका मैकेनिज्म भी काफी हद तक खराब हो गया, टूट गया हुआ, और तब से लेके अब तक हमने बेयरली कोई एडवांसमेंट देखी है इन टर्म्स ऑफ डीलिंग विद दीज इश्यूज. उसके बाद we've seen that there's a lot of lack of technical expertise in decision and policy making with related to people who are meant to focus on population. The governance and implementation structure, and जो हमारा जो paper है, you'll see a lot of detailed findings in that with data, with proof as to how we've identified these are the main causes of failure. Long story short, at the very core of Pakistan's failure to control its population growth rate is the planning program and related goals in effective management. So now when you talk about solutions, you just flip the failures around, the causes, the challenges, and you'll find the solutions very simple. हमने तो दो चीजों में ग्रुप किया. एक तो है आपके broader development goals. ये सारों को पता है, आपको अपना एजुकेशन लोगों तक पहुंचानी है, तालीम का मेयार बेहतर करना है, हेल्थ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बेहतर करना है. You need to focus on female labor force participation. You need to focus on gender equality and equity. But then, realistically speaking, policies need to be made, measures need to be taken to make advancement in those areas. But they're going to take some time to actually materialize. ये ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि हम कहें यार एक दिन में, 2 दिनों में, 1 साल में, 2 साल में हमारा एजुकेशन, तालीम का निजाम, हमारा हेल्थ का निजाम, सारा कुछ पलट जाएगा 180 डिग्रीज और हम बहुत बेहतर हो जाएंगे. We need to work on that. We're not saying we don't need to work on that. But the pressing urgent need is to actually address the second group of solutions that we've identified, that is effective management and service delivery. So हुकूमत जो है वो अपना administrative निजाम बेहतर कर सकता है और वो बहुत जल्दी इसका turnaround time is not 1 year or 2 years. It's actually very less. It's a short-term solution so that they know how to address the problem while we grow towards realizing other economic development goals. जरूरत किस चीज की है? We've done a lot of research studies. We've looked at case studies from Bangladesh, other countries who've been able to control their population growth. What they did was they were caught in a similar structure of civil administration, bureaucratic hurdles, but they leveraged the private sector, and secondly, they leveraged the networks and the infrastructure of their NGOs and INGOs. And they were able to raise a lot of funds by bringing on board a lot of global entities, मतलब USAID हो गया, UNICEF हो गया, UNFP हो गया, population. उनसे उन्होंने funds raise किए, उन्होंने अपना जो NGOs का network था उसको mobilize किया, जो NGOs bureaucratic hurdles face करती थी, उन्होंने वो bureaucratic hurdles उनके सामने से हटाई, ताकि वो penetrate कर सकें throughout their population, throughout the various regions which were even difficult for the government to reach. And this is what we envision for Pakistan as well. Whether we've, year on year for the last 5 decades, the government has not been able to take any grip on what the problem is. And it's not an argument. We just need to look at the numbers and it's fairly visible. अभी भी हमारा जो growth rate है, उसको control करना, कोई coherent policy भी नहीं है, कुछ किया भी नहीं जा रहा जिससे वो control किया जाए. तो रज़ा साहब ने जो शुरू में बात की थी, at Karakoram Initiative, we do not want to publish theoretical research papers of things what could have been or what could be. We want to give tangible actions, possible solutions, जिनको आप implement कर सकें on the ground. So हमारे जो population के जो experts हैं उनके साथ मिलके, जो administrative experts हैं उनके साथ मिलके, we propose the solution and which we will put forth to the government as well, is to establish a population planning board, a separate entity which reports directly to the Prime Minister and which circumvents all these. ये जो आपकी left side पे है, ये आपका current निज़ाम है, bureaucratic, हुकूमती, provincial निज़ाम. We propose कि इसके parallel एक body entity बनाई जाए. ये उस entity का जो micro level structure है वो नीचे वाले आपकी window में, and you'll find these in the paper as well, जो कि work करेगा इन provinces के साथ, network को mobilize करेगा NGOs के private sector को, उनको on board ले जाएगा stakeholders, funds भी raise करेगा खुद से. मतलब there's no need for even the government to allocate a lot of funds because we don't expect that to happen. So all our solutions, our strategies are very, very fact-based, very realistically ground-based. Based on that, we aim to achieve the following objectives and address the problem that Pakistan is facing. We have a set of activities with the timeline that we worked on, deliberated on how this could be handled, the amount of time that it would take, the amount of funding that it needs to take, and how that funding will be raised and generated. In conclusion, while institutional and policy reforms are definitely needed, economic betterment is needed to address the problem of population, but you cannot, for a country like Pakistan, you cannot even tread towards that particular objective until and unless आप head on आपकी जो administrative reforms हैं, जो कि govern कर रही हैं, जो कि dictate कर रही हैं कि population के जो मसाइल हैं वो कैसे हल किया जाए जब तक उनके अंदर reform नहीं आता. And a lot of this you would find in the paper that's up on our website, and we hope that we are already in touch with the government, and by further pushing them and sharing the details with them, we'll be able to address this issue that Pakistan no longer can afford to take A&P anymore. That's just about it, and thank you so much. If you have any questions, please. It's time for the Q&A, and I would like you to give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. And you can ask those from anyone, from Reza Saab, from Harun Saab, and from me as well.
Can I ask the question? आपसे शुरू करूं? डॉक्टर शुजात हो, मुझे ये बताइए, मैं ये पूछना चाहता हूँ कि ये जो पॉपुलेशन का जो प्रॉब्लम है, ये पाकिस्तान का जो एजेंडा है इसको तो क्यों नहीं? I would like to hear you. Tell me why it is not on the agenda. क्यों नहीं? ये आज से 77 से पहले, 77 is a watershed year. 77 से पहले ये एजेंडा पे होता. आप हमारे प्लानिंग सिस्टम है हमारा, वो 77 तक, 70 तक तो चलता था. 77, 71, 77 में वो जो गवर्नमेंट थी, उसने प्लानिंग, they did not believe in the planning commission, ने उन्होंने किसी को प्लानिंग कमीशन को बंधा भी नहीं लगाया, तो प्लानिंग नहीं है हमारे पास उन सालों में. तो ये पहले प्लानिंग पे था, वो क्या माहौल था जिसमें ये एजेंडा पे था, اور اس کے بعد 77 میں کیا ماحول بنا پاکستان کا جس میں یہ ایجنڈا بھی نہیں. تو یہ پلاننگ کمیشن کے بھی میں اسٹاف کالج میں تھا, اپنے کورس کو لے جاتا تھا پلاننگ کمیشن over the last 4-5 years. تو جب وہ ہمیں پریزنٹیشن دیتے تھے تو اس میں وہ 8-10 ان کے پلرز بنے ہوئے ہیں, وہ ہوتا تھا پلان پاپولیشن میں ہی ہوتا. ایک دفعہ میں نے ان کو سوال اٹھایا کہ یار پاپولیشن کو نہیں, انہوں نے کہا ہمارا چیف جو ہے وہ کام کر رہا ہے, اس کو ہم نے بلایا نہیں, وہ آئے گا تو ٹھیک نہیں کرے گا. This is the level of prioritization of population in Pakistan. They did not have it on their main presentation. تو مجھے تھوڑا سا آپ چیزوں کو بڑی سپرفیشلی دیکھ لیں, مجھے بتائیے گا کہ ایران اور پاکستان, ایران اور بنگلہ دیش, وہ انہوں نے کچھ چیزیں کی ہیں جو ہم بھی کر سکتے ہیں to break down resistance to letting this thing come on the agenda. ہم کسی چیز سے ڈر بھی رہے ہیں, ہم کسی چیز سے ڈر رہے ہیں. I would like, I want you to tell me وہ کس چیز سے ڈر رہے ہیں, کیوں نہیں ایجنڈا کی. Thank you.
ڈاکٹر صاحب آپ نے مجھ سے میرے آفس سے کیوں نہیں پوچھا؟ ڈاکٹر صاحب دیکھیں, جن چیزوں سے آپ کہہ رہے ہیں ڈرتے ہیں, یو ول بی سرپرائز کہ ہماری ریسرچ نے شو کیا ہے کہ وہ چیزیں دے آر ناٹ این ایشو اینی مور. اس فیلڈ میں اتنا کام ہوا ہے, میں خود حیران ہو گیا تھا. اور رائٹلی آپ بھی ٹھیک کہہ رہے ہیں کہ 77 تک تو یہ پلاننگ کمیشن کے ایجنڈے پہ تھا, اس کے بعد بھی اس پہ بہت کام ہوا ہے. تو وہ جو ایشو ہے وہ ریلیجس کم یو نو کہ یہ ناٹ ہمارے ریلیجن میں نہیں ہے, اس کو ہم روک نہیں سکتے وغیرہ, وہ ایشو ختم ہو چکا ہے. The issue has graduated into two things. ہماری جو major political parties ہیں ڈاکٹر صاحب, this subject has become very unfashionable. It's not spicy. When a leader comes and stands in front of 10,000 people, وہ جب پاپولیشن کی بات کرتا ہے تو کوئی اس کو سننے کے لیے تیار نہیں ہوگا. آپ کوئی پروگرام کریں گے پاپولیشن کے اوپر, کوئی آپ کو ویوز نہیں ملیں گے. آپ اگر ٹیلی ویژن پہ جا کے اس کے اوپر پروگرام کریں گے کوئی اسپانسر نہیں ملے گا. This has become unfashionable for whatever reason. Maybe yes, that may be a reason کہ 77 کے بعد it was never propagated by the government officially. Maybe that's why it just, it was so long left off کہ it just is not a priority. So ایک تو یہ وجہ. دوسری وجہ وہ یہ ہے جو ہم بتا رہے ہیں کہ دیکھیں, جب آپ بنگلہ دیش کو دیکھتے ہیں اسپیشلی, it is just incredible what they've done within a few years. اور اس میں انہوں نے کیا یہی ہے. میں جب یہ 1998 میں پرائم منسٹر کے پاس جب سولوشن لے کے گیا, میں تو پاپولیشن کا ایکسپرٹ نہیں تھا, تو میں نے ان کو کہا کہ اس وقت میں نے ان کو کہا 25 بندے چاہیے, 25 people. He said, what are you talking about? He said, میں نے کہا 25 کروڑ روپیہ چاہیے, وہ بھی آپ کو واپس کر دیں گے. He said, یار عقل کی بات کرو. میں نے کہا اس میں اتنا پیسہ ہے. یونائٹڈ نیشن یہ سیکنڈ ورلڈ وار کے بعد یہ ایک ایسا سبجیکٹ ہے جس میں بہت زیادہ کام ہوا ہے, اس میں انلمیٹڈ پیسہ ہے. ایک بات. دوسری بات 25 بندے اس لیے کہ all you need is you just need monitoring. اور نیچے آپ کا پورا انفراسٹرکچر ایگزسٹ کرتا ہے, اگر اس کو آپ نے پراپرلی مینج کر لیا اور مانیٹر کر لیا, that's all you need to do. میں خود سرپرائز ہو گیا تھا. سو اب یہ بات جب میں آپ کو بتا رہا ہوں, جب میں نے پرائم منسٹر کو بتائی, he refused to believe me. اتنا سمپل کیسے ہو سکتا ہے. تو I can bring a lot of experts of population. یہاں پہ بیٹھے ہیں, the DG population is sitting as well. I think we should give the mic to her and she can tell us where we're headed. But I hope I've answered your question. So these are a couple of things. Mic دیں گے, mic کا ہے جی آج
کل پاپولیشن ڈے تھا, پوری دنیا میں منایا گیا. So this event is so in proximity with what is happening around. I'm really grateful کہ مجھے آج انوائٹ بھی کیا گیا, اور میرے ساتھ ہمارے آفس کے کافی سینئر ऑफिसर्स भी आज मौजूद हैं, बल्कि हमारी डायरेक्टर मॉनिटरिंग में बैठी हुई है. So as far as population का जो subject है, that is concerned, as everyone knows even better than me, ये इतना complex और multi-layered topic है, and I think it is larger than life itself. So maybe one sitting is just not enough to do justice with the topic. But चूंकि बहुत सारी research की findings भी share हुई, so मेरे बहुत quick notes हैं, and that is also just for the perfect health of the research in future. कि बहुत सारी चीजें वक्त के साथ साथ बदल भी रही हैं, जैसे बहुत सारा डेटा कोट किया गया, और मैं जस्ट फॉर द मतलब हम तो बहुत हम्बल उसमें मैं रह के ये बात कह रही हूँ कि ये इतनी तेजी से तब्दील हो रहा है कि अगर 1 घंटे से ये प्रोग्राम चल रहा है तो आप इमेजिन करें 800 बच्चे पाकिस्तान में और पैदा हो चुके होंगे. तो आज जब रात तक 24 आवर्स गुजरेंगे तो तकरीबन 20,000 बच्चे पैदा हो चुके होंगे. कितने लोग 60 क्रॉस कर चुके होंगे और कितने लोग, आज मेरी जो छोटी बहन है उसकी सालगिरह है. सो इमेजिन करें कितनी तेजी से आपकी एज और पूरी जो पॉपुलेशन की पिरामिड है उसमें सेकंड्स और घंटों में तब्दीली आ रही है. सो ये टॉपिक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है, इसको जानना भी बहुत जरूरी है. There was little bit mention about the demographic transitions. I think we are a part of a global community. दुनिया में फैमिली प्लानिंग की फील्ड में जो हो रहा होता है वो हमारे ऊपर भी असरअंदाज होता है, सिमिलरली हम भी असरअंदाज हो रहे होते हैं. सो ये बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग टॉपिक है, बहुत ही अच्छी बात है कि इस पे रिसर्च करने का सोचा गया, एक स्टेप इन द राइट डायरेक्शन. बट कुछ चीजें हैं, इट इज नॉट एज बोरिंग. दूसरी बात ये है कि इट इज क्वाइट एन एक्साइटिंग टॉपिक. इट इज ऑन द एजेंडा ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट. जब गवर्नमेंट के डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं, गवर्नमेंट की पॉलिसीज मौजूद हैं, तो इट मीन्स के एजेंडा पे है. यस, प्रायोरिटाइज ऊपर नीचे होती रहती हैं चीजें, बट इट डजंट मीन कि ये डिमिनिश हो गया है या ये इसकी इम्पोर्टेंस कम होती है. Number 2, in terms of budgeting and all, I think I would like to give latest evidence. वो भी अगर आप विश करेंगे तो वो जरूर like to share. डॉलर्स या किसी भी करेंसी में आप कुछ भी कोट कर दें, बहुत सारे इकोनॉमिस्ट बैठे हैं, that doesn't tell us कि ये ज्यादा है या ये कम है. इवन अभी पॉपुलेशन भी पाकिस्तान की, are we too few or too many? It depends upon lots of situations. क्योंकि बहुत शुरू में तालीम और वो सब था, तो आई रियली थॉट कि वो रिसर्च में जो लोकल कम्युनिटीज और जो हमारा बिहेवियर है टुवर्ड्स पॉपुलेशन एंड फैमिली प्लानिंग एंड टुवर्ड्स हैविंग द नंबर ऑफ चिल्ड्रन, उस पर जरूर हम मेंशन करें. बिकॉज दिस इज मतलब बाकी तो मैं गवर्नेंस की किसी एरिया पे डिबेट नहीं कर रही, बट हम पॉपुलेशन की जब बात करते हैं, फर्टिलिटी की, हैविंग चॉइसेस एज कपल्स, इवन अभी हम पूछ लें कि हाउ मेनी चिल्ड्रन यू विश टू हैव, तो 1, 2, 3 और more. So the current fertility rate in Pakistan is 3.4. So I think it all depends on a couple's choice. उसको जिंदगी में क्या करना है, ये बहुत voluntary एक act है. We can't even determine the number of children a couple should have. कर सकते हैं नहीं कर सकते हैं, अभी हम पूछ लें सबके नंबर ऑफ चिल्ड्रन डिफरेंट होंगे और सब जस्टिफाइड होंगे.
करना चाहिए, कर नहीं रहे.
मैं वैसे बात कर रही हूँ ना, एज अ कपल इट इज योर राइट, योर चॉइस, एंड करना क्या चाहिए वो फिर बाद में आते हैं. सो आई एम ऑल ट्राइंग टू से ये एक इसको हमें बाकी ये सुनने में बड़ा, खासकर में पाकिस्तान में बैठे तो बड़ा अजीब साउंड करता है कि वॉलंटरी चॉइसेस की बात हुई है. बट मैंने शुरू में बताया कि आप एक ग्लोबल कम्युनिटी का भी हिस्सा है, और जिन ममालिक ने इसको बहुत कोहेसिव तरीके से करने की कोशिश की हिस्ट्री में, उसके भी एविडेंसेस हैं. So as I said, एक multi-layered topic है, and we all have sentiments attached to this topic. और अच्छी बात है topics के मुतालिक one should be excited और उसको ज़्यादा explore करना चाहिए. And all I can say as the Director General that I can assist in this research process. Research is an always ongoing activity. ये कभी भी किसी final नतीजे में तो पहुँचती नहीं है. तो जितना आप research करेंगे, इसको मज़ीद explore करेंगे, ये मज़ीद refine होगा. But nevertheless, it is an important area और इसके ऊपर मज़ीद रिसर्च करने की भी बहुत ज़रूरत है. जहाँ तक गवर्नमेंट के डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं, स्पेंडिंग है, एक्सेस की भी बात हुई, अनमेट नीड की भी बात हुई, एफर्ट्स की भी बात हुई. आई थिंक जो लेटेस्ट सिनारियो है वो जरूर मैं शेयर करना चाहूँगी. बट ऑफ कोर्स दिस इवेंट इज नॉट ऑर्गेनाइज फॉर मी. ये चूँकि रिसर्च को प्रेजेंट करने के लिए हो रहा है, तो मैं तो सिर्फ इतना हेल्प जरूर करूंगी कि अगर कभी भी इसको मजीद रिफाइन करना चाहें, आपको डेटास चाहिए, हमारा बहुत जबरदस्त डैशबोर्ड्स है. वी आर इवैल्यूएटिंग situation all the time. I think एक तो general impression population back में कब भी बन गया कि ये कुछ नहीं करते. So I would like to just express my sincerest wishes for all the researchers, and I would also like to stress कि research हम भी साथ कर रहे होते हैं. So जहाँ आपको हमारी assistance की जरूरत पड़े वो आप जरूर लें, so that it becomes a more accurate and up-to-date research in future. Thank you so very much.
Shukriya बहुत Saman Sahiba. Any other questions? Yes, please. Daisy.
So my question is, once this research starts getting implemented, how will you deal with the mullahs and the Maulvis who are so against all this? Because so a few years ago, LGS 55 made family reproduction and reproduction, and it was a very small class to school में high schoolers के लिए था, और वो इतना scandalized हो गया था कि they got police reports and stuff that they had to stop. And it's a very privileged school right at the moment. It's a private school. So जब private schools में इतने मसले आ रहे हैं, तो national level क्या आप लोग कैसे deal करेंगे?
देखिए, there's one. It's okay. I'm not aware of the nature of the function that I was at the school, but what we speak is like we talk with data, right? Yeah. And what we've identified through this research is like three that we've had every year. Actually, per year there are 3.8 million unintended pregnancies, right? The rate of contraception is 25%. 50 or more women who want access do not have access. So these are some of the issues, and we know that population boards exist. The government have entities and agencies who are tackling these issues, and they're not targeted, they're not brutalized, they're not, you seldom see anything. The problem is that you need to improve their functioning. So they need to improve the rate of, the CPR. It needs to go from 25% to 75%. First, we need to get a house in order. First we need to minimize the rate of unintended pregnancies. Like Saman Sahiba said, it's a voluntary act. But the fact is that how much choice do you have in ensuring that you're able to fully utilize the choices that you can make? So first of all, once we're able to improve the government's mechanisms, do what the government should be doing, only then I think then it's the secondary step where we will able to everyone will find out that the issue that has been made out to be, it's more of a rhetoric and it does not really impact the actual numbers as it should be. Because that is the sentiment. So if you go without research, this is what you'll notice. Social norms, cultural norms, religious norms. No one will be talking about the efficacy of the government. And this is where the entire crux of the issue lies. Please.
Hi, so my name is Iman, and thank you so much for all the information that you've shared. So my question is that you talked about Bangladesh in your presentation, and it's not only in population control. In every field of social and public policy, we compare ourselves to our regional neighbors, especially Bangladesh. I've had some experience working in education policy in Bangladesh as well as textile industry. So, and what you said is Bangladesh is really good in harnessing the collaborative approach with the NGOs and the private sector, but somehow Pakistan is not able to do that. So, I mean, it's while it seems that, okay, if Bangladesh can do it, so can we, there's a very fundamental difference in how like collaboration and openness to creating synergy works in Pakistan and Bangladesh. So why do you think that is?
To be honest, if you would want, I would welcome if Kaza Sahib and Harun Sahib want to answer that too. But my take would be that you see this across a lot of sectors and areas, and what Dr. Shah initially asked as well, was that I think we've not been able to disrupt the status quo that exists in terms of governance and policy reform in Pakistan. And we look at us, the governments that come in, they're very short-sighted. Sadly to say so, unfortunately, they are. We do not have any long-term strategies. We don't come up with 20-year, 25-year, 30-year plans. Even when they do come up with, they're not tangible. They're not built in ground realities. And they tend to ignore the actual relation because the motives and the intentions are very different. Unfortunately, we've been stuck in that rut, and it becomes a political economy issue more than a population issue or more than a governance issue. And you need improvement overall across the board.
Okay. So I'd like to add, thank you, Noresh. I think you highlighted political economy. I think I just want to respond to this because I also happened to work in Bangladesh a few years when I used to work for the ADP. I think the central issue or the difference between Pakistan and Bangladesh is the how gender empowerment has been facilitated and enabled by the state. So the role of the state here becomes paramount. In Pakistan, we also see that women are coming up, the private sector, the civil society, etc. But state-led efforts are still a huge issue. If you look at the gap in secondary education, in primary education, in other areas of life, if you look at the gender indices, there are quite a few, you will see this difference. And one of the primary correlation between population control and education is the level of secondary education attainment. And this is how Bangladesh overcame, because when they started educating their girls up to the secondary level, you saw a decline in the fertility rate. This has been documented in the 80s and 90s when it all started happening in the, and that is something still missing. Nore's talked about the number of girls out of, number of kids out of school. If you look at that number, you'll see there are more girls, exactly, right? And there are many girls who do not complete either the secondary education or the primary education. So that's the first variable. The second is their labor force participation. If any of you have been to Dhaka, you will see that at 5 or 6 p.m. the streets are flooded with women coming out of factories, shops. It's a totally different scene. And you don't see such scenes in Pakistan. I live in New York now, where the Bangladeshi women, the migrants, are everywhere. In Dunkin' Donuts, in shops, in grocery shops, in markets, they're wearing a hijab. Their, religious identity or whatever norms are not stopping them. So labor force participation, secondary education specifically have been identified as 2 areas that lead to the control in fertility. So that's what I wanted to, but I also wanted to especially thank the DG of Population Welfare, someone, and I think she's absolutely right. This is a very multi-layered topic, as we are more and more dimensions are coming. And she's really an impressive leader in this field. I think Punjab is very lucky to have an officer like her. So a special thanks to her again for all the efforts she's doing. And, she's brought the entire department, which is also a level of response to our humble research, right? So thank you once again.
Can I ask a question? Please. This is someone, Raza Sahab just talked about the role of the state in controlling population. When someone mentioned here the religious rulers. Now, when we have to influence the state, we also have to influence the political parties, and we have to somehow organize political parties or organize in a manner in which we can influence political parties to influence the state in this regard. And what we see here is that while the mullah problem is very serious, how do we, navigate this situation where the mullahs are not allowing the political parties to take this issue up, and we are not ready to organize, and we are unable to deal with so these 2 things are interconnected, I believe. And if someone could answer how the religious fanatics or extremists can be made to maybe succumb or somehow allow the political parties and allow the people to organize and influence political parties and as a result the state as well.
Shall I?
May I say something on this?
Please.
Very pertinent question. Overall, the make of the society does matter. Your social attitudes, they do matter. I've seen, I've lived in 2 countries, developing countries. One is Indonesia, second is Nigeria. Now, there were 2 different kind of countries. In Indonesia, the population was more docile. Their systems were functional. Even their local government system, Haisab talked about the local government system, it was functional. Even at the village level, they had a very good organization where people were working, everybody was part of that. I knew the language, I learned the language, international language. I could speak with the ladies also there. and they were so confidently talking on population control and all these things. Probably systems were functional, government was functional, and it was functional at the grassroots level. As far as the attitude, mullah issue has been raised, I think you can incorporate mullah into population control. Don't try to fight him out, because you will not be able to beat him in our society. Try to incorporate him into your strategy, into your operational strategy.
Did that.
Actually, that should be our approach instead of fighting mullah. For example, just see our polio campaigns. In some of the areas, still there is an issue. Previously, the parents, at the behest of mullahs, particularly on the mullahs' advice, that don't go for polio drops, they'll not allow your children later on to bear children when they grow up. So that kind of attitude has changed quite a lot. And when you go to the villages also today, things are quite okay now. People are very voluntarily coming up for the polio drops. Similarly, I'll talk of Nigeria again. Nigeria is a mess like us, almost similar country, similar population. Growth rate may also be the similar.
It is similar.
Yeah, similar. I won't know the exact figure, but then it is similar.
About 3%.
Yeah, it is because of the non-functionality of the systems. No governance at the grassroots level. That's how there is no population control. In Pakistan, if we really want to go ahead, first you have to create a bottom-up democracy, bottom-up democratic system. The system must rise from the lower levels, and it must be synchronized with the upper levels then. But then a system which is based at the ground level, that will be much more effective. Now, population control is such a subject. You don't have to talk at the national level or even at the provincial. You have to talk about it at the ground-based level. You have to talk at the village level. You have to talk at your mohalla level. You don't have to make too much of noise about it. You don't have to do that. You have to do it very quietly. And don't antagonize mullah. Please incorporate mullah into your effort. I would request Nawaz Saab, please do that. Make it part of your strategy. Yeah? I think it's not very difficult.
It is not.
I know we have, I'm a military man basically. We have worked in difficult areas and we have incorporated mullahs into our efforts. And they have done their job, no issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I just want to quickly respond to that. I think that's the central issue here. Population services are a subset of the larger service delivery universe. And because we have neglected and impaired our local governments for years and years, we create them, we destroy them, we create them, we destroy them. So first of all, there's no functional system of service delivery at the local level. And this is just one of the key services which is directly linked. So we talk about sanitation, drinking water, other basic citizen services. So population is just one of that. So that's one particular requirement, as you said, bottom-up democracy or local function. But I think extremism is a problem. We mustn't, while it may not be the biggest issue as we speak, but it is there in the order. And that's why Shujat Saab mentioned why all of this changed after 77. It has partly to do with that, and we have to recognize that. We just cannot ignore it. Because, if you see other Muslim countries like Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, Bangladesh, 4 examples, high population growth rates, all 4 have controlled their population growth rate, except for, mashallah, Pakistan, the fortress of Islam, self-proclaimed. And why? Because we have, as was mentioned by Harun Haja, that it is not a political priority. The political parties don't talk about it. It is not there on the state priorities. If you look at the budgets, if you look at the budget speeches, rarely population is mentioned either at the provincial level or even at the national level. But the third thing is the implicit societal inhibition to talk about it. And the unmet needs, which is again a euphemism for saying that, there are men and women looking for contraception, but they can't find it. Because I just read, I think in the previous government, all contraceptive ads were banned, and that ban continues. You can't show contraception advertisements on television, or you can't talk about that on radio. I mean, you can't even give public health education to people. It's a health issue. It's a healthcare issue. It's a family issue. But you don't do that because, you know, some sensitivities may be hurt or whatever. So in Bangladesh, as was mentioned, the religious clergy was employed successfully at the local level by the government. In Egypt as well. In Iran, Khomeini, when he assumed power in the late 70s after the Iranian Revolution, one of the first edicts that he issued was about population planning. The Ismaili sect within the Muslim larger community has already decreed an edict. So it is doable. It is only in Pakistan that because, and I know it's a controversial statement, because the state and the political governments, they all use these clerics for their political purposes, for whatever objectives, to win elections or make opponents lose election, or to charge and say that. I will cite a debate that I was part of, I think about a decade ago, on television on the World Population Day. So there was a TV debate and I talked about population planning, and there was a very famous Qari, I think Mufti Munib or someone, who said that you are trying to reduce the number of Muslims in the world who will carry out jihad against infidels. These are his words. I have the tape as well. I mean, it's a classic example. Now, obviously, he does not represent the majority of Pakistanis. He does not even represent maybe the majority of informed clerics, but he has the platform. He can say anything and get away with it, because the state will not. In Egypt, once again, in UAE, in Saudi Arabia, all the places we look up to as these bastions of Muslimness. Even the appointment of imams is regulated. In Egypt, you just can't open a mosque and become an imam, because the government has to give you a certificate and see if you're trained in doing the basic services. In UAE, in Saudi Arabia, or Indonesia, in Malaysia. Why is Pakistan so different? I think that's a larger question we need to ask. And I don't want to belabor further, but I think it's an implicit issue responding to your question.
In the interest of time, we'll just take one more question. Yes, please.
So my question is regarding how population control is linked to the economic challenges that Pakistan is facing. Because what I am thinking is, like, the simple formula for GDP is like that if the population is increasing, the overall economy is going to decrease in value.
Well, that's a simple formula, but there are other variables that actually impact and determine, that this equation hinges upon. And just going back to the fact that between the ages of 5 and 16, 44% of the population is not going to school. So if that population is not going to school, once they grow and mature into adults, coupled with 40% of the population that is malnutrition, who have health issues, they are likely to be a liability rather than an asset. So if you are able to give them the right ingredients, the right inputs, then of course, for sure, you need to give them health, you need to give them education, you need to equip them with the right set of skills and tools that they can absorb themselves into good, dignified, respectable jobs. But the fact is, you're not giving them the tools that are needed because we don't have the resources. We don't have the resources because we are debt-ridden, because of the fact that we've trapped into a circular motion of debt and lack of economic resources at our hands. Plus, we are water insecure, we are food insecure, and we water scarce already. So the more kids you add, and like DG Sahaba said, कि हर दिन 20,000 बच्चे जो हैं उनकी मजीद यहाँ पे उनकी पैदाइश हो रही है. So you do not have the resources. So unless you don't have the resources, you can never transform that capital, which is human capital, into something which can contribute towards GDP growth or any sort of prosperity.
Any other question, comments? तो बस फिर हम wrap up करते हैं.
एक सवाल मैं करना चाहता हूँ. मुझे याद है ये हनुम साहब ने मुझे ये पेपर भेजा था मुझे याद. तो मैंने उस में किसी और चीज में इन्वॉल्व था तो मैंने कमेंट नहीं किया. लेकिन एक चीज मैंने नोट की थी जिसने मुझे थोड़ा सा डिसअपॉइंट किया. वो ये था कि पाकिस्तान में एक इदारा है पॉपुलेशन काउंसिल. जिसको एक खातून I'm sure रजा जानता है, मैं भी उनको अच्छी तरह से जानता हूँ, वो हमारी हमसे थोड़ी सी 1-2 साल ज्यादा, ज़ेबा सत्तर उनका नाम है,
ज़ेबा जी,
उनको हम बुलाते भी हैं, स्टाफ पॉलिसी भी बुलाते हैं, वो बहुत काम करती है, उनका बहुत सारा लिटरेचर भी है। आपने आपके पेपर में आपने उनको साइट नहीं किया हुआ था?
जी थोड़ा सा किया, मैं बीच में डायरेक्टली नहीं किया,
बट उनका वो लोग जिस तरह जो इशू आपका लोगों ने पॉइंट आउट किया, वो इस इशू पे जिस तरह बांग्लादेश में काम कर रहे हैं,
जी जी, शी इज द लीडिंग
उन्होंने काफी काम किया जी। तो आई वुड वांट कि आप उनको भी फॉर्म में अपने अपने पेपर में उनकी इस तरह की
उनका इनपुट डाल दें। बिल्कुल, वेरी गुड आइडिया, थैंक यू डॉक्टर साहब। So, Hanu Sahab, why don't you conclude, so just say a few words and then we can sort of open happy.
Well, in conclusion, देखें, as far as I'm concerned, जो लोग मुझे जानते हैं, I'm not an expert in population. मैं तो accidentally मुझे Prime Minister ने कहा कि ये करना है, तो that's how I fell into this. And as I said कि जब मैंने research करनी शुरू की तो मेरी आंखें खुल गईं, because मैं तो economy, finance, infrastructure, economic development उसके ऊपर concentrate कर रहा था, and that's when I realized कि भाई इसको fix नहीं करेंगे, it's like a bleeding person जिसके आके ऊपर heart surgeon बैठा हुआ है, kidney का बैठा हुआ है, lungs का बैठा हुआ है, लेकिन उसका खून कोई नहीं रोक रहा, so the patient is constantly bleeding. So that's why this subject became at least my top priority, और मैं पिछले 10 साल से at least propagate कर रहा हूँ हमारे leaders को, हमारी गवर्नमेंट को कि इस मामले को जो है इसको टॉप ऑफ द एजेंडा होना चाहिए। एंड मैं आप सब लोगों का शुक्रगुजार हूँ क्योंकि यू सी वी नीड टू स्टार्ट दिस डिबेट। हम लोग बोलना शुरू करेंगे, हम डिस्कस करना शुरू करेंगे, हम सॉल्यूशंस के बारे में बात करना शुरू करेंगे। आज हमें बहुत अच्छी रिकमेंडेशंस आई हैं डॉक्टर साहब, जैसे आपने कहा, हम इस पेपर को कंटिन्यूसली, इट्स अ वर्क इन प्रोग्रेस, ये कोई सेट इन स्टोन नहीं है, तो इसको करते रहेंगे, बट दिस इज व्हाट वी नीड टू डू, एंड यू नो इट मस्ट नॉट स्टॉप हियर, वी मस्ट कंटिन्यू टू डू दिस। मेरे पास जैसे आपने देखा 13 और चीजें ये करने को, तो मैं तो वो करता रहूंगा, लेकिन जो हमारे पॉपुलेशन से रिलेटेड लोग यहाँ पे आज बैठे हैं, मेरी रिक्वेस्ट उनसे है कि प्लीज इसको कंटिन्यू करें और हमें बताएं हम आपको कैसे हेल्प कर सकते हैं इसको एजेंडे के ऊपर लाने के लिए, एंड विल डू व्हाटएवर वी कैन। यू नो यहाँ पे यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स में जिस तरह से भी डिप्लोमेटिक प्रेशर करवाना है उससे, लीडर्स को कन्विंस करना है उससे, जो हमारी गवर्नमेंट है उसके अंदर से, हम हर तरह से आपकी हेल्प करेंगे। And you know, this is how I guess we need to propagate this very very important subject. So आप सबकी तशरीफ आवरी का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। छोटे से चाय का एहतमाम किया हुआ है, तो प्लीज you know 5 मिनट उधर भी सस्पेंड।
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ji.